Welcome to Evolved Radio, where we explore the evolution of business and technology. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by Nate Freedman from Tech Pro Marketing. We talk about some of the common mistakes IT companies make when building their marketing engine. We also discuss some of the effective tactics in marketing to your clients. We focus heavily on the use of LinkedIn as a vehicle for generating leads. We also touch on using websites and paid click campaigns. There's a ton of useful ideas and strategies in this episode, so listen up and maybe take a few notes. If you enjoy the show, be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcast from. Also, be sure to check out the webpage evolvedmgmt.com/podcast for show notes, links to my guests, and to check out previous episodes. Now let's get started. On the podcast today, I'm speaking with Nate Freedman, CEO of Tech Pro Marketing. Welcome, Nate.
Hi, Todd. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to be speaking about an area that is not necessarily a strong skill set that we tend to find in the IT industry. So hopefully there'll be some high value for people. You have a deep history in marketing, and the info that I've seen and the people that I've talked to, you can definitely get some results in what you're doing. So I think this will be a really valuable conversation, and looking forward to it. To get things started, I suppose, as I noted, the IT industry tends not to be strong in sales and marketing unless they have a sales-focused founder. So I imagine you come across people that are not necessarily doing things correctly in some cases. You want to talk about maybe some of the common mistakes or issues that you see when you get introduced to companies and evaluate what they're testing and trying from a sales and marketing perspective?
Yeah. So, the number one thing that we hear, we ask in our strategy call application form, we ask the question, what is the biggest thing you're struggling with right now with your marketing? And the number one response that we get is, I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah.
So the number one issue I would say that MSPs are making is, not doing it, not having a plan, and really it's not being consistent. What we've seen is even when companies are doing it, a lot of the MSPs that we deal with, they, can scale at a certain pace, so they might land a couple new customers and then stop. What you're not taking into account in that situation is that actually the MSP sales process is a long sales process. It can take a really long time. So if you think you're going to kind of stop your marketing, stop whatever lead generation activities you're doing, and then kind of just pick it up at the right time, you may be setting yourself up for some type of, feast and famine cycle. That's another thing I see a lot of.
Yeah, definitely. Consistency, and especially in marketing, like the term that I hear is people say you need to give any type of strategy that you're testing 3 to 6 months to validate whether or not it's working for you. Is that similar to what you would suggest?
I would say definitely at least 3 to 6 months, even longer. What we've seen is sometimes we've, struggled with a campaign, struggled with a certain client, certain target audience, certain market, whatever's going on there. And it's usually not like breaking everything down and rebuilding it that gets us success. It's usually like a small change or a small tack. And sometimes you have to tack a few times, shift a few times before you hit on something that's kind of going to get you in the right direction. That can definitely take 6 months. It can take longer. You want to shoot for shorter, for sure. Yeah. You know what I mean? But you have to shift, you have to tack, you have to make changes.
Yeah, I think that's a tough one for people, especially like the smaller groups. They feel, I'm putting this money into this campaign and these strategies, and I'm not seeing the results, quote unquote. And that, they say that after 6 weeks of testing something out. And I think that does a disservice for them. So I think that's a really important one, is just recognizing you have to do something, otherwise you're just not going to get any leads. And if you're going to do something, you have to give it the time to bear fruit, right? Be patient. So that's a good one. What about the smaller MSPs, the groups that are maybe 5 to or less people or under 10? Do you find that the marketing strategies or the mistakes that they make are different from the groups that are maybe 20 seats and above or 50 staff? Because those larger groups may have a better hand at marketing. Do they make better mistakes once they start doing it, or do you find that they're similar?
What we've seen is I kind of separated into above 5 million and under 5 million in revenue. We've seen at about that $5 million threshold, sometimes below that, you will have someone who's kind of full-time on sales and marketing pushing the pace. And that really that really kind of leads to big growth, is having someone dedicated to push that pace. We've seen the smaller MSPs, they don't necessarily have that in place. And that's one of the issues that we've been dealing with, like as an agency, is right. How can we take some of these smaller MSPs where the owner is a little bit stretched? Maybe there's a couple people in leadership who can help out, but how can we push the pace as an outside agency? And yeah, that's part of the battle of MSP marketing.
Yeah, and I think that touches on sort of the perpetual issue in most MSPs. Is I describe the owner wears 8 hats, one of them being kind of the sales and marketing piece of that. I think it is good for those organizations that if they recognize they can't dedicate the time to it because they're busy with a lot of other things and they can't sort of spend the time that should be spent on this, that they really should be outsourcing to a group like yours. So maybe that's a good point to talk about the services that you provide and how you can act as an extension to the MSP.
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, we have been working with MSPs exclusively and doing lead generation for over 2 years. And in that time, we've been honing down and focusing our core product. It's called the MSP Lead Generation Engine. This is a system that we've kind of put together where we take the strategies and tactics that are that we've just found have the most success, get the best kind of return on investment. We follow like that 80-20 principle where it's like we want to just focus on the tactics that are going to get you 80% of the results with 20% of the the effort that you need to put in, the input that's required. And it's like there's tons of tactics out there. There's so many different things you can do as an MSP. But it's like, let's get the ones that are going to give you the most bang for your buck. And a big part of our program is LinkedIn marketing. So kind of what we were a little bit touching on earlier.
Yeah, so that's definitely one, I would say, sort of my rank of recommendations that I suggest to people. I'm not the sales and marketing pro, but I've sort of been around and seen enough of this done. The ones that I tend to recommend are AdWords. If you're not doing that, you probably should. You just may as well, is sort of how I feel about that. Qualification is do AdWords well. I think a lot of people just throw up a basic AdWords campaign with a smattering of keywords. They don't do negative keywords. They don't do it well. So again, like relying on some external party who knows marketing to coach you in the right direction, I think is really key. And then the second one that I recommend is definitely LinkedIn marketing. I'm surprised by this. I've found that the success rate on this is higher than I would have predicted. Do you want to dive a little into that strategy and sort of the success that you've seen and maybe a bit of why you think that is? Why do you think LinkedIn has been such a successful lead generation strategy?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like just to kind of transition and finish off that AdWords comparison, it's like, I think especially for a lot of smaller MSPs, it's like AdWords budgets, they can get very high. It can be a lot to stomach. If you're thinking about quitting a LinkedIn strategy after 3 months, well, think about your AdWords strategy where you've got budget, you've got management fees. I mean, that can be hard. That can be hard to kind of, stomach all of that, seeing all that money being spent. But with you, like I've seen in the long run, there's a reason why the cost per clicks are so high because the people bidding on it, the people getting those leads are seeing return on investment on those. But I think LinkedIn, the reason why it's popular, the reason why it's working is because, it doesn't take that level of financial commitment. So it's something that you can kind of get into, and it's something that you can, if you leverage scale correctly, you can scale it and you can grow it and you can consistently get something out of it. Like if people aren't familiar with LinkedIn, I think everybody definitely knows what it is. And it's one of the hot kind of marketing strategies and tactics right now. But it's a social network for business people, and it's kind of become this secondary messaging system to email, right? Where email is maybe now entering this new phase where 10 years ago, there wasn't so much phishing. There wasn't email security. There wasn't all of these spammers. Maybe 10 years ago there still was. Maybe 20 years ago there wasn't. And you could get through to anybody's inbox. Nowadays, G Suite and Microsoft, they're making it harder to do things like cold email. Although cold email, it can definitely still be a very effective part of a lead generation strategy. But people are moving their messaging to LinkedIn. And it's becoming this kind of acceptable place for people to receive messages. I think one of the issues, one of the perceived things why it won't work is because there is a lot of spam on there. and those messages do go through. But at the same time, I found that if you run a good campaign, if you just go in and you throw your spam up there, you're just spamming people, you're not going to have success with it. But if you actually have a strong campaign, you have a reason for reaching out, people will respond there. They're on it. Your audience is there.
So that's one of the points I wanted to touch on, because I'm on LinkedIn a fair bit. I'm not on Facebook anymore. I deleted my account a couple of years ago. So I tend to sort of surf around on LinkedIn probably more than I did in the past. And one thing I do see is people push back around, that the in-mail spam, or people just connecting with them and then immediately pitching them, right? So you have a strong hand at doing this type of outreach campaign. How do you sort of get past people's sort of mental barrier or resistance to sort of that initial outreach? How do you kind of do that soft outreach without sort of people putting their walls up and feeling like, oh, this is a sales pitch coming in, right?
I think it's really kind of for me, it starts with my mindset. Okay. So this is something where you really do have to go in with the mindset that it's like, okay, I want to approach other business people in my area and let them know about my service and ask them if they're interested. Is there anything wrong with that? Why should anyone what's offensive about that? You know what I mean? I think there's really nothing wrong with it. Yeah. If I'm getting a request from, someone in another state or another country who's trying to sell me lead generation services, and I've gotten 10 of them in a row, that is going to feel bad and that's not going to stand out. But, if you're an MSP owner, if you have ties to your local community, if you're a real person and you're experienced, I think a lot of the spammers, you can tell they're just inexperienced people. If you have a lot to offer, people are going to see that, so there's an art to kind of making your profile stand out. But if you don't have substance behind it, there's not much you can do. And if you do have a lot of substance, it doesn't really matter what your profile's like or what your outreach message is. People are going to see you and they're going to know who you are. They're going to know it's a real person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what about some people, I think, try to focus a bit on marketing on Facebook as well. And so maybe a comparison between Facebook and LinkedIn as an opportunity platform for this type of outreach. I'll start with maybe kind of my initial impression of this, and you can kind of tell me if I'm right or wrong and expand on this. But I feel like Facebook is a better place to start. Either if you're still doing some kind of residential support, or if you're like more consumer focused, whereas LinkedIn tends to be a better B2B platform. And the reason I bring this up is anyone who goes out there and tries to learn something on the internet about internet marketing, you're going to end up kind of down this pay-per-click and Facebook is your platform type strategy. And I think a lot of that is built for more of those consumer focused markets. What's your feeling on that? How is LinkedIn different than Facebook? And would you use both, or are you pretty strong on LinkedIn as the best platform?
LinkedIn as a platform, as a system process of kind of finding people in your area, sending them a request, and then trying to spark up conversation, which is basically like a general LinkedIn outreach strategy. It's simple. It takes work, it takes time, it takes some thought, but it's a pretty basic strategy. Facebook, on the other hand, is like this very in-depth science that you have to really know a lot about. Not only do you have to know like the technicalities of what exactly you're doing on Facebook, but you have to have an offer that's proven, that's attractive, that's sexy, that's going to work. So I think it's it matters that it's B2C or B2B, but I really think that if you are doing Facebook, if you're using either Facebook ads or you're doing a group or something like that, you just need to have a very mature offer. And I just think a lot of MSPs that they're just not thinking about it that way. They haven't built their offer up that way. I mean, you'd have to find business executives that you could somehow, start connecting with. I mean, if I had like a whole nother lifetime or something, maybe I would dive into it and try to focus it. But that's like a major, I think MSP marketing is so challenging on its own. I just wouldn't personally want to add that mountain into it,
Yeah. Okay. And what about, so similarly, LinkedIn advertising? So, I think you guys focus largely on sort of the direct outreach and sort of the one-to-one finding sort of good leads and good conversations to have with people. What about the advertising platform similarly on LinkedIn, so that you could have kind of those promoted ads? Is that something that you guys have looked at as well?
Well, it's like, again, we've experimented it. We've done things like that, but a lot of times the promoted ads, like on LinkedIn, that's similar to maybe like more of a Facebook campaign, of what you'd actually be doing. That would work if you have some type of, or I would start that. I wouldn't go straight to like a network analysis, like, hey, you see my ad, fill out a network analysis. I would go to some sort of one-to-many conversion activity, like a lunch and learn. Mm-hmm. So I think if you have a very mature sales and marketing process in your business and you're doing things like lunch and learns, you could leverage LinkedIn ads, and that could be a great way to drive attendance to your lunch and learns. If you have an immature marketing process, immature marketing engine, it's going to be very challenging.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It kind of gets me to also like the one piece I feel is sort of missing in people's sales and marketing strategy is a really good landing page. Like, where do you direct people to if you're setting up these types of campaigns? I'm often horrified by going to look at people's website, and it looks like it was written, in some type of very low cost tool, WYSIWYG tool, and it looks 18 years old and it's functional. Like, it tells you how to contact you and a bit about the partners that they have, but it's really not a great representation of the brand. So, from the work that you do, how important is it to start with those basics of the brand element, having a really good website that looks modern and professional? It doesn't have to be super crazy sexy, but at least somewhat modern. Doesn't look like it was built in Word, right? How important are those basic elements to start with, or are those things that you can kind of correct for after the fact?
I think it's, you want to match the professionalism of your target audience. Mm. So if you're looking for businesses that have under 20 users, and that's your sweet spot, go with what you got. If it's in Microsoft Word, whatever, your website's in build in Microsoft Word, that's fine. But I think if you're trying to, hit that kind of getting into a little bit of the higher level of tiers, you got to match them on a trust level. So I think it's pretty important. And I think kind of the number one factor that I've seen into making a website effective or not is really the personality of it, like actually showing photos of the team, of the office, showing that there's some reality to it. And that if you take this website for this MSP and you just pop another MSP on there, it won't work, But if you kind of fail that test, then it's like, people aren't going to have this kind of, they're not going to have the same connection to it because there's going to be no reality to what you're offering. So it's like a lot of times I see these MSPs and it's like, are you really even in business? Like, are you? It seems like this website was just like put up overnight. It doesn't show anybody's face. It barely says anything. It's like, it's not very trustworthy.
Right. So you think that that's a factor of trust, maybe comes down to the fact that people ultimately, people do business with other people. And so you need some personality and some personal connection in order for people to trust you as they hit your landing page.
Yeah, your landing page should get them to know, like, and trust you, right? That's who they like to do business with. So for sure, they have to know who you are, your landing page. And I think, for an MSP, your website homepage, this should be your best landing page. This is the one that most people are going to go to. It's going to get the most traffic by far. So put most of your energy into there. But it's like, yeah, make sure people know you. They understand. We do IT support for businesses in this area, right? That they like you. So showing photos of you guys, if you can have a professional videographer come in and, do a video of you guys, a brand video, I think those things are super powerful on a website. And then they need to trust you, mm-hmm. right? So you need to show if you have, been featured here, if you've won this on the MSP, if you got 99% smile back score, testimonials, customer testimonial videos. I mean, those are the things that can really kind of make it a lot easier. If there is a situation where it's like people are going to get to your website and they're going to go into it and thinking like, okay, yeah, I'm not gonna do anything right now. I'm just kind of checking it out. Your website is so persuasive, they'll be like, I'm just going to fill out the form right now. I changed my mind. You can do that with a good website.
Right.
So
what are some of the messages that you see are resonating? Like your team is kind of doing this outreach on behalf of the client. Are there certain technologies or solutions that you find are people are a little more keen to hear more about? I imagine security has to be one of them. Are there any? Is that? I assume that's true. Although tell me otherwise if not. Are there any others that even make their way into the conversation? And what are those? I guess.
What I found is that there is kind of like maybe, 2 or 3 parts of the market. There's like this, bottom part of the market where they are looking for an IT company, right? An IT services company. They understand that there are IT companies out there, and they understand they do everything and they don't really care. They just like know that they need somebody. Maybe they know a little bit about what current people are doing, and they just need somebody to take care of everything. When we get kind of responses in our contact form fills, I could show you like what the contact form fills say. 95% of them say we're looking for a new IT company. They never say maybe 5% of the time they do ask about a specific technology. And then the middle of the market, it's more like, oh yeah, there's an IT director. And of course we work with an MSP. Our MSP handles all this stuff. We understand exactly what our MSP does. They handle this function of our business, And in those cases, it's more like, when's your MSP contract up? What's going on with that? How do you make your MSP decision? It's something that's assumed. So I think I guess my sense is that the market that, we want to get our clients in touch with, they're aware of what IT companies are and MSPs are, the services that they do. And they just know that they understand the managed model and they want to stay on that, So I found that almost everything is really just based on the we do everything approach. We manage it for you.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point too, is understanding your client really helps allow you to form your messaging much better, right? If you're trying to be, everything to everyone, then it doesn't resonate as someone goes to your site and reads what you do. They don't sort of read themselves in your solution. And I see this a lot with sort of the less mature websites where they tend to talk very technically. They talk a lot about the vendors that they work with, and maybe that is useful more at the mid-market if you're doing systems integration, a lot more project work, because people may be looking for someone to help them with a particular solution. But I think in the more so in the MSP market, there's the certain sort of stratas of maturity around, we just need someone to fix our stuff. Right? Like that's their understanding of what they need. We need a computer guy, right? Especially those under 20 staff businesses, they don't have the sophistication to understand what you do. So you need to kind of meet them on their level in that case, and then be able to bring them up in some educational phase of, here's what more we can do, rather than just sort of jump to the pump to fix the issues that pop up. So definitely that education phase, but I think a lot of people would benefit from starting lower on the verbiage and the description of what they do, and simplify things and talk more about value solutions and helping the clients run their business. I think that's going to appeal to more of the audience that in general are looking for this actively on the internet.
Yeah, one thing that my mentor said to me that really stuck with me, for a long time, is that it's not the value of the service that you provide that's important. It's the value of the problem that you're solving,
Right.
So if you can have this super amazing cybersecurity solution that does so much, but if that your customer cares about, you know what I mean? It's not really going to help you win a deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Excellent. Anything else we haven't touched on that would be valuable for the MSP community to understand around the marketing space?
No, I mean, I guess I can reiterate the 3 main. It's just be consistent, right? Make sure that you're always doing something, right? Be yourself, right? Be honest, be clear, be credible, be a real person, right? And then, be persuasive, right? Get something that's going to be able to close people, be able to have some type of conversion action. So I think if you follow those, the way our conversation went today, we gave a pretty good guide on how you can start generating leads.
Yeah. Well, if people wanted a little more help or they wanted to reach out to you for some more advice, where would they follow you? On social or websites as well? I can link to everything in the show notes.
For sure. You can definitely find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Nate Freedman on LinkedIn. I'm probably connected with somebody in your network, so I'll be the first one up there. Send me a message. Happy to take a look at your LinkedIn profile. Go to our website, techpromarketing.com, and click on the Start Here button. That'll allow you to fill out our email list registration. You'll get our course, Marketing Your MSP the Right Way, and you'll get all of our emails going out after that. I usually publish 1 or 2 articles each month. You'll get those directly in your inbox. And then if you feel like, hey, you don't want to wait around and wait for articles to come and read them, and this is a big problem that you're facing right now and you want to talk to someone about potential solutions for your business, you can go to our website, techpromarketing.com, apply for a strategy call, and you'll get in touch with me or one of our team members, and we'll see what the next step is for you.
Awesome. And I've looked at some of your lead magnets, the downloads that you offer for signups and things like that, and they're really good, like a sort of above the class of what you tend to see in the industry. So if definitely sign up for the list and get the benefit of some of those materials for sure. All right.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Nate.
All right. Thank you, Todd.